Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Frankel, co-founder, CEO of NextTMT, and we have with us today a regular guest, a monthly guest, John Giegengack, Grand Poobah of Hub Entertainment Research, principal actually. How
I
you
like
doing
I
today,
like that.
John?
I'm gonna have to change my cards. I like that.
Get one of those hats they had at the Flintstones, the
Yeah.
Grand Poobah. So today, John's going to present a brand new study for the firm that looks at free ad-supported streaming. As you might guess, all the consumer metrics are going up, 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 as these things tend to do with this sector. I haven't seen one where consumption is going down yet. Hub interviewed or surveyed, I think it's over 3,000 users,
hmm
2,500 regular fast users, and over 500 folks that don't use fast, John, or what? Yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk to people that watch free streaming. Then we defined free streaming as people that watch one or more of, I guess, about 8 or 9 of the largest free streaming aggregators. And then we
Right.
also captured, of course, people that use YouTube. YouTube is free streaming, and it's also the biggest streaming platform on television. But we wanted to be able to look at people that watch fast. We wanted to be able to compare usage of sort of long form fast aggregators to people that use YouTube. So not treat them as one monolith. And then we wanted to compare them to people that don't use free streaming at all, just to see if some of the conventional wisdom about folks that watch free television, do those hold water or not.
So a lot of dynamics going on in the market right now. A shaky economy, which always makes S5 elasticity a little different. You've got social video, which is conditioning the market to consume in a different way. We'll get into all of it. I'm going to take a look at the hub deck. It's worked down from here.
hmm
Fast Full Throttle is the name of the study. It looks like a Vin Diesel franchise. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I like that. We have a good we have a really good graphic design guy here, but I like all the covers we do. This might be my favorite one.
Yes, the graphics are always appealing, so that's what we one of the reasons why we feature them too much. The report starts out giving a backdrop on still pretty big growth numbers. I expected to see this thing tempering
hmm
or this migration to free ad supported at some point, but you included in the report a backdrop with ComScore numbers from 2025 that showed 43% year over year consumption. It seems like this area is almost topless in terms of how it expands.
Yeah, but it's a little hard. Like we did put in those data points, and we put in data points from other companies because we like to see how our findings match up against what we're not the only experts in the industry. We like to see how our findings match up with what everybody else is seeing. But one thing I think is important is that a lot of this analysis tends to treat free streaming as a monolith when there are
Right.
actually lots and lots of different, very different models within them. There's, there's YouTube, of course, which is the biggest streaming platform of any kind on television that also happens to be free. There are companies like LG that have, or the smart TV companies that have their own store brand streaming channels that are embedded in part of the operating system, and the Roku Channel being the biggest one of
Right.
those, at least here. And then there are the aggregators like Pluto or Tubi, but even within those aggregators, there are very different philosophies. So Tubi is mostly on-demand viewing and relatively little live streaming. They actually make some of their own originals. Their biggest distinguisher, I think, is the fact that they've integrated creator content alongside long-form content, which is something that none of the other platforms have undertaken, or at least the ones that are doing it quite a bit later. And then Pluto, on the other hand, has by design little to no original content at all. They're leveraging their Viacom and CBS library as well as content they can license from elsewhere. But theirs has a lot more live streaming than Tubi does. So when we talk about fast as this kind of monolithic category, I think it tends to wash away some of the differences that are
Agree.
not significant, and they're important to understand to get a handle on why and how this kind of viewing is growing.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and there is a lot of nuance here. And I'll just state it because it's the elephant in the room. The two biggest fast platforms, the government permitting, will soon merge. Fox is
hmm
buying Roku for $22 billion, and you have Roku, which, like you said, is the native operating system for a lot of smart TVs that you buy them and you use that system. and Tubi, they come at it a little different. Tubi's more on demand, as you just described. Do you think that makes them complementary, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that'd be amazing. I mean, it's more stuff to watch for free. Tubi in particular does a really good job. They're, I think like an early adopter of AI, for instance. And the challenge with a lot of these fast platforms is that they run mostly on catalog content.
Right.
And the cool thing about that is that today consumers don't really care if a show is brand new. They just care, is it new to me and is it good? The other good thing about catalog content is that depending on which company you are, like if you're one of these legacy, like a Fox or like a Warner Brothers, you've got 100 years of IP to draw upon. And we've already seen how many shows accidentally become hits, like Gunsmoke becoming in the top 10 streaming shows a year ago, when it's been 60 or 70 years since there was an episode of Gunsmoke created. There's a lot of value in them there hills, a lot of gold nuggets yet to be discovered. The challenge, of course, is that the volume is so big that you need a pretty sophisticated method of weeding out all of the stuff that a person isn't going to be interested in, so they don't have to wade through tons and tons of uninteresting shows to find the ones they care about. But I think Tubi has already shown some skill in doing that. They want to be their self-described mission is to be the Spotify of television, and which I think is a really good example, because there's tons of people that still listen to Willie Nelson and Led Zeppelin, even though they are old and haven't come out with a new album in a while. The quality is still really high. And I think that a philosophy that treats TV content the same way, where there's just stuff that's just good no matter what, or there are old shows that people will actually see the fact that they're library shows as a feature, not a bug. In our own fast research, we found, for instance, a guy that loves Tubi because he likes to go back and watch old episodes of Matt Houston or Miami Vice. So the fact that these shows are old is actually, and that that IP is available in a way that makes it easy to find, is actually a selling feature for him. It's a thing that makes this content more appealing. So I think that especially for legacy media companies that have 100 years of IP to harness, if they can combine that with some sophisticated, AI seems to do this really well, method to make all of that content discoverable, take that fire hose of 100 years of content and make it something that a normal person could actually make use of. I think that is a massive recipe for success. And it's also something that the Netflixes of the world, while they have a far bigger user base and they have a lot more money for content, they don't have 100 years of studio content. That's the reason that they were so interested in getting Warner Brothers Discovery. It's the reason that probably a lot of people are going to be interested in trying to acquire NBCU when that comes around. But I think we're getting to the point where the most valuable thing you can have is IP, or good stories, a
Right.
lot of good shows, and how old they are is no longer going to be such a big deal.
Yeah, Tubi, I think, was one of the first to recognize that. You talk upper management. They talk about, we want to take each individual viewer
Yep.
down a rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how Google works with YouTube
Yep.
being integrated into the discovery layer of Google TV.
Yep.
They are hyper personalizing. The mass 100 million people, whatever it was, watched at the same time.
Hmm.
That's not their game. And I think you're making the point that with Roku's library, you cume that, and it becomes even more powerful.
Yeah.
And
Roku is already the reason that any of us know what Roku is that their whole mission is just to make TV easier to use. And now they have their own, they have some original content. They have the Roku channel, but at the core of it, Roku just exists to let any individual person go from turning on the TV to watching the show that they want to watch in the shortest amount of time. And they're largely agnostic. They don't really have skin in the game about what you wind up watching. They just want to make it easier for you to find it. And that is the number one thing that viewers need right now. They care about a simpler way to watch TV. A lot of people care about that more than they care about price.
right,
And I think it's really encouraging when you hear the folks at Fox talking about this merger, that they have come out of the gate very clearly saying that Roku's strength is that it's the Switzerland of television, and they don't want to change that they don't want to put their finger on the scale to steer more people to Fox content.
right.
And I think that they're exactly right that would be the wisest way for them to go, because taking away that sort of agnostic nature of Roku would be would be getting rid of the special sauce that's made it so successful in the U.S. at least.
Yeah, you don't want to politicize it. It's kind of a broad skewing platform that a
People
big
people
chunk.
are already people are already really. I think we talked about this on one of our other sessions, but people are really jaded now about the recommendations that they get from streaming platforms because they are realizing that increasingly when a service says, "Oh, recommended for you," what they really mean is that it's recommended for us. Like, it would be great for us if you watch this show instead of this other
Right.
one that we have to pay licensing fees on. And so, we talked to one person in one of the qualitative interviews who was talking about every time he goes on Prime Video for a long time, he would see promotions for the Rings of Power, like recommended for you. And he's like, I don't like the Lord of the Rings. I never watch fantasy stuff. I don't like dwarves or elves. I'm never going to watch the Rings of Power, but it keeps getting served to me as recommended for me every time I turn it on. And I think that what people really want is they want the Switzerland of TV. They want an agnostic recommendation where the thing that is at the forefront is not what this service would like for me to watch. It's what I'm really going to like. And I think that anything that can be done to make discovery work that way is going to be just way more appealing to users.
The Trade Desk, the advanced advertising platform company, introduced that concept, at least to me. I wasn't aware of it. 2 years ago, they emerged on the market with a new tvOS, Ventura,
Hmm.
that was marketed using the language you just described. We're a neutral platform. We don't have a content dog in the hunt. So
Yep.
what we serve up to you is based on actual data, not on agenda. And it sounds, my take on it initially was, I'd heard only that consumers just played whatever was on their smart TV and didn't think about it too much. But it seems like there's a real experience and savvy that's developing. They've been streaming for a decade, many of them,
Hmm.
and they're starting to be able to tell when they're being, you know, pandered to in a way that's not completely above board, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they know when they're being sold, and now the ones that have been streaming long enough can remember when it wasn't that way. So you remember back to the old days with Netflix's original algorithm, it was a percentage,
Right.
like the percent likelihood that you were going to like this, and then eventually they switched, understandably, over to the thumbs up, thumbs down because the highest percentages were leading people to mostly licensed shows, and those are the shows that Netflix has to pay other people to show, and not the ones that they own themselves. So I think I think Netflix still has a really good discovery experience. I think the reason Netflix is successful is they mostly do put the user's experience first. But for anybody who was around, who was getting Netflix recommendations 6 or 7 years ago versus the ones they're getting today, can probably perceive a difference. And that's why we're seeing a lot more people who do a lot of their discovery outside of a TV app, and they even do a lot of their discovery well in advance of when they sit down to watch. They'll go to Rotten Tomatoes, they'll go on Reddit, they'll look for reaction videos on TikTok, they'll go to ChatGPT and just do natural language queries. It's a lot easier than trying to fit what I'm interested in into the
Right.
language of, Grace Note genres and subgenres. And I think that that's something that these companies really need to pay attention to, because if the discovery process doesn't work, nothing else works after that. And especially with FAST, the volume of content is so much bigger, and the number of titles that don't have any marketing attached to them because it's been years and years since anybody made a new episode, that agnostic, neutral discovery method and recommendation method becomes even more important.
So I'll just plunder one more thing. AI seems to be, the rapid advancement seems to be a difference maker. There's been this chase for this holy grail discovery mechanism for a long time, which doesn't seem to get anywhere, at least from the consumer perspective. But now you have Fox, which has a massive free library, which has the resource to really invest in a good search capability based on
Hmm.
very cutting edge technology. I wanted to just jump back a little bit because it's the next page on the deck, but it does seem to be worth talking about. Friction is a point we want to make, but subscription fatigue seems ever present. Every time I see a report on fast growth, it seems to be the driving factor. Subscription streaming is getting a little too high for consumers.
Oh, the cost, you
Bundling,
mean?
correct.
Yeah.
Bundling isn't improving it. You're still seeing customers resistance to buying new SVODs based on just reaching their limit.
Yeah, well, so we've seen that the number of different sources a person says they watch TV from has plateaued, but
Right.
it's plateaued at a really high number. I think it was like 6.5, roughly, and that's that's all free, paid, ad supported, non ad supported, cable, even electronic sell through, so renting or buying content. But there are two things going on. One is that the cost of streaming goes up, and if your streaming subscription goes up $2 or $3, maybe that's not a showstopper. But if you're paying for four of them and they go up that much, and they go up that much each year, it starts to get you start to feel that a little bit, or maybe a lot. The other thing that's grating on people is just the mental bandwidth that's required to remember all of these different services, and
Right.
so I think that's another thing I think that some people in the industry are sleeping on is the magnitude of the success of things like Amazon channels. So Amazon channels is great because you can subscribe to lots of streaming platforms through that. But the thing that's really great about it, the thing that makes a huge difference for people is that you can discover content on all of those services all in one place, all within the app. Whereas if you just have a bundle where you're getting a deal on the price, and maybe I've got like the Disney Plus HBO Max bundle, or I've got streaming services included with my Spectrum subscription, you still have to go into an app and you still have to get out of that app and go into another one to use it. You're paying less, but the experience is still largely the same for some of them as if you were managing two separate subscriptions. And so I think the big benefit here, especially for companies that have fast service and they have premium or paid SVODs, is that having all of that content together in one spot lets you discover more all within one interface. You never have to leave. You don't have to remember to go out of Pluto and go into Paramount Plus. If it's all contained in one spot, you get to watch some stuff for free. You get hooked on 1923, or you get hooked on the Madison, and you
Right.
can click right from there, and you can go to watch the next episode on the paid platform. If somebody just pitched you Paramount Plus as a streaming platform, not necessarily connected to anyone's show, there's not necessarily a big sense of urgency to add Paramount Plus to all of my other streaming services that have lots and lots of original shows, and they all cost about the same amount of money. But if someone says, sign up for Paramount Plus here, and you can watch the third and all the rest of the episodes of the Madison that you just watched two in a row for free, like forget about it. Like people will 100% do that because they have something that they're engaged in. There's a sense of urgency about seeing the next one, and there's almost no effort involved because you just click and move up that continuum from fee to a paid user.
Amazon Prime seems particularly advanced. It's not surprising they've got the biggest technology investment probably of anybody at this point. But if you're looking for a specific movie or show, even if it's not in their channels
Yep.
ecosystem, they recommend it to you. One sent me to the Roku Channel last night.
Yeah, then Roku does that as well. They give you all the ways to watch. Hopefully, they start off with the ones that you already have access to, but
Right.
but they give you all the options on where you could find the show.
So sort of digging into the meat of the report in the survey portion that you guys conducted. It's
Hmm.
interesting to look at. You identify here 16, uh, 12. I can't counting quickly. 15 fast platforms. Everything
Hmm.
Tubi, Roku Channel, Xumo, Plex, Sling, Freestream, Prime, My Free
Yeah,
DirecTV.
yeah. So I mean, it's not a perfect. We tried to pick the ones that are big enough that
Right.
because there's a million small ones that we could do, but we wanted to get a read on the biggest platforms that account for the most users and that aggregate content usually from a bunch of different sources.
Yeah. Back in 2022, a new one emerged every day. And those, we have 45 gazillion channels with
Yeah.
X number of shows. And it was hard to tell if there, what the pecking order was.
Hmm.
It seems like it's not a mature market, but a hierarchy has definitely emerged. I mean, you
Well,
have,
and ironically, there's almost no quicker way to scare the hell out of somebody that you might that you want to have them watch your platform than to say we have 400 different channels. Like that's among people want a lot of stuff in the days of streaming, but one thing they don't want is just more content for the sake of more content. If anything, they want less. They want to see less content and have more of it be the stuff that they're interested in.
yeah. So the marketing message has been less is more, less
Yeah.
friction, less decisions. So just flying through, looking at some of the charts as we discussed, cost is a major driver for the decision. People have been inclined to learn about these platforms and try them out based on the cost dynamic that was identified by 87% of the survey body. But what was interesting is if you take that component away, quick to access is the next one. Quick to access and easy to use, 40% and 39%. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the most interesting things in the whole study. I think is that when Fast came out, I think that people underestimated it. So people assumed that the people that are going to watch free streaming and that are going to watch free streaming that's a library of old shows. It's like the online equivalent of that blue bucket at Walmart with the $5.99 DVDs in it.
Right.
People assumed that the folks that are going to watch that are going to be the people that don't care about TV enough to pay for it. So kind of the least desirable TV consumers that there are. But it turns out that's not the case at all. And while we ask people, what are the benefits of free streaming versus the other kinds of services you use? Almost 90% of people said that they don't cost anything. So the fact that they're free, no surprise there. That is the most differentiating, appealing thing about free streaming. But
Right.
it's not the only thing. And when you look at the other things that do appeal to people, the next three were quick to access, which we defined as getting something running on your screen in the shortest amount of time after you open the app, easy to use, and then easy to discover something new to watch. Those are the next three most appealing differentiators of free streaming. And those are all things that we also see people say about social video. So if you think about TikTok, for instance, one of the biggest frustrations that people have today is just TV discovery, just navigating all of this content. All the premium media companies we work for spend a ton of time thinking about the discovery journey. Like, how do people journey from sitting down to finding something that they're going to watch? But if you think about TikTok doesn't have any discovery journey at all. You just sit down, you turn it on, the video plays, you like it and you watch it, or you don't like it and you swipe and you watch the next one. And it very quickly learns the stuff that you're interested in. And that's what passes for low friction today. Almost any amount of effort, people will put in effort to choose something, but sometimes they just want to put something on and not use their brain and just have it play immediately, which is the same thing that people did in the old days when you just kind of channeled around and just stumbled upon something. It's really hard to stumble upon something on Netflix or on HBO Max. It's really easy to stumble upon something on YouTube, and on TikTok, you're pretty much required to stumble upon something. It's actually sort of the actual task of searching for something in particular is buried a couple of layers deep. And so I think one of the things that Fast has done really well is embrace this use case that everybody has. Some people have it more often than others, but everybody has it some of the time, where you just sit down and I want to get something playing that I'm going to be interested in, and I don't want to really think that hard about what it's going to be. Social video does that really well. Long form streaming video does not do that very well,
Right.
although we've seen some actions even just this week to make that better. And I think too, that's one of the reasons that Tubi is doing so well, because Anjali, the CEO, she's not 80-year-old white guy. She's young. She's a millennial. She, I'm sure, grew up using YouTube, and she really understands how these consumers work. And that having the creatorverse that brings in creator content and puts it alongside all the long form catalog content that they have. If you're my age, that seems, like putting the chocolate with the peanut butter. It seems like two totally different categories of stuff. If you're 25, it makes complete sense to have both of those kinds of content together, the way it makes sense to have an aisle in the supermarket for vegetables and then another one for milk and another one for crackers. You wouldn't want to go to a separate store to buy each one of those things. You want them all together in one place because it's more convenient. And that's exactly the way I think that younger consumers today think about long form content and short form content.
Yeah, you mentioned the leader of Tubi. She cut her teeth at Vimeo, so
Yep.
that's her DNA. I think that was a smart hire. They look at it a very
Absolutely.
different
Yeah.
way than everybody else does. One of your other recent study iterations looked at tvOS, and there seems to be sort of a renewed discussion about something we always knew, that kind of pole position to the
Yep.
consumer. What drives the smart TV they just bought is a really important decision for a lot of people. And you mentioned sort of this frictionless desire for consumers. 33% say they choose the channel and the content just based on what they saw on the home screen. So if you can position if you're a smart TV maker and you have your own OS and you can position your content there, you'll likely get an audience.
Yeah, I
People,
mean, we find that because especially it used to be that people would just go out and buy a smart TV and they'd take it home and they'd hook it up to their Chromecast or they'd hook it up to their cable box and they would circumvent the whole TV operating system to watch on a different input and use the device that they were used to using. They don't do that anymore. And in fact, the operating system is now as important to people as the brand of a TV when they're shopping for one. Because, for instance, if your other TV sets are Roku TVs and you're used to using the Roku interface, if you buy a new Roku TV, you set it up and you put in your account information and it populates all the other apps that you had in there already. You don't have to go through that whole hassle. The other thing that we found is that one of maybe even the most common way that people find out about new services, or at least the most common way that they act upon is when they get a smart TV for the first time. And then when you're setting it up, it recommends apps to you that you might like, or it might just be the apps that another company has paid them to promote.
right?
But about half of people said that they added an app during that setup process. And then about half of people said that they added one during the setup process, but then they never added another one again after that. They never went into the app store. So that sort of very discrete window of when you've got somebody's attention and when they're going to add a new app is a huge advantage that smart TVs have. And one of the most common kind of an app that people discover that way are fast apps.
Yeah, I don't have that data in front of me, but it was notable for me because I looked at it and the number of people who, from year to year, maybe it was a 3-year comparison, but the number of people, percentage of folks that did add an app later went up markedly, which implied to me that folks are getting more discerning, a little bit more capable in terms of understanding there's other stuff out there and knowing how to get it. Uh, Again, sort of speaking to that sort of consumers getting more experienced and comfortable with streaming. I want to look at this. You'd explain this using fast as your prime discovery engine, and
Hmm.
you pulled your cohort, and 64% say they sometimes use a fast discovery engine as their primary search tool. 21% say they never do, but in 15%, yeah, that's my jam. It's my main tool.
Yeah, I was struck by that as well. I mean, the question was uh, that they think about. So again, it kind of belies this whole idea that old content is worse than new content. That's just not the case anymore, and it's especially not the case with young people. You know, all the kids that are watching The Office or they're watching Friends, and they weren't even born the last time a new episode of Friends came out. They don't care if it's a good show, and even better yet, if there's a ton of episodes of it, that makes it actually better than something that just came out, especially if it's a brand new show and it's not a known quantity. So I think that again, this Tubi is doing this, I think, especially well. All of that massive library that you can compile of catalog shows, especially if you're part of a big company that owns a big catalog already, that stuff is gold as long as you have some method where people can use it. So they don't have to boil the entire ocean to find a little part of it that's of interest to them. There's some kind of technology or algorithm or better yet AI that will A, let them search, or B, better yet, do the searching for you and curate it and show you from all of the stuff that's out there, the things that are going to be of interest to you. And that's why I think their philosophy, their sort of tagline of being the Spotify of TV is such a apropos one, because there's tons and tons of music out there. Spotify does a great job of not just blasting you with all the music that's ever been made. They
Right.
they they show you the stuff that you're already listening to, the stuff they know you like, and the stuff that's adjacent to that, so that you can actually discover something new without it being a total crapshoot that you might hate it.
Yeah, and as you, I think, alluded to, the customer in this case is specifically looking for discovery and for
Yep.
somebody to handle it for them. This particular graphic talks about 86% of users discover content that surfaces on the TV set. They didn't turn the thing on with the idea that I'm going to watch Gunsmoke. It was put in front of them and the platform made the decision for them. whereas premium SVOD is more of appointment viewing. Oh, I hear the new Ted Lasso's on. I found out about it someplace else. I'll go in and watch it on my Netflix or Apple
Yeah,
subscription.
that was a super interesting finding. So the way that one works is that among people that are fast users, 86% of them said that they regularly discover content because it was surfaced to them on their TV set. So that could be like the TV operating system, or it could be within an app. But only 56% say they regularly discover new content from an off TV source, like a word of mouth or an ad. And that's different from how stuff gets watched on streaming on demand platforms, where a lot of the research, people often sit down already having decided what they're going to watch, and they've done a lot of research about that before they get there. But what happens with fast platforms is that a lot more of the discovery happens within the app, and that's probably because the shows that you're discovering on fast, there isn't a lot of promotion out there that could tell you about them. No one was placing ads for Gunsmoke, promoting Gunsmoke when Gunsmoke made it into the top 10 last year. But that also means, again, it puts more importance on having a really good discovery system. But it also means that people are showing up there with the expectation that I'm going to find something good to watch, even though I don't know what it is yet. And that's a really enviable position to have, because they don't have any expectations about, they're not looking for one particular title. They're not going to find out this one title they want to see is really on some other platform. They know that there's a ton of stuff here, and they have trust in the fast service that it will steer them to the things that they're going to like from this massive library, and therefore they don't have a reason to leave and go somewhere else.
Got it. John, we're going into a little bit of overtime. I hope that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's a slide, we must discuss it.
Why not? I mean, it feels incoherent to cut it off. All right. So back on. You also discuss fast as flywheel,
Mm-hmm.
kind of belying the economic discussion. What are the capabilities of these platforms to drive purchasing decisions for premium platforms? You have
They're
nearly 40% that's kind of resistant to it, but the majority seems open to the idea. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you think about the old days when there were streaming services like Showtime Anytime or HBO Go back in the day, they
Right.
would routinely make some of their, like, not all of it, but like one or two episodes available in front of the paywall so people could watch and get hooked on it, and then that would give them a reason and a sense of urgency about signing up for a paid service.
Good
We've seen
marketers,
that.
those guys.
Yeah, that was a great idea, and we've seen that kind of go away. And I'm amazed. I'm really surprised that ever went away. But the potential for that now is just bigger than ever. There's more new content. There's more money being spent on content. The content's really, really expensive, and it's really good. And I think that too many platforms are hiding their light under a bushel by putting all of the best stuff behind the paywall. Companies that have Any company could take just a little bit of their best IP and just give people a taste for free. And then you're not asking people to pull out their credit card on the value proposition of like one more streaming service, of which they already have a bunch. You're telling them to take out their credit card to see more of Yellowstone, to see more of this show that you just watched 2 episodes of, and you're hooked on it. That's a much more compelling case to give people. The way that Peacock drove all those subscribers by putting the NFL playoff game on Peacock a couple of years ago, that drove 3 million new subscribers because they really wanted to watch that piece of content. It aggravated the hell out of a lot of people too, because they had to sign up for something to watch the NFL playoffs. But I think the potential to do that with scripted content is huge, and it won't make people mad the way, putting sports out of reach are, but it does give people the chance to sample the wares and appreciate the value of it, and gives them a very concrete reason to add one more streaming service at a time when many people already feel like they have too many.
Question: fast for the most part, Tubi notwithstanding, it skews a little older, correct?
No, fast. I mean, on most, it varies by service, but in general, and in our research, they skew a little younger, and some services skew much younger.
You have a little bit of research here about the openness of having social creators.
Yeah.
I know Netflix has made an effort to kind of imbue that. They've got, creative community people from YouTube on there. about just under 40% say they'd be open to that. 8% very open. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's among people of all ages. So I don't know off the top of my head what the numbers for younger people were, but they'd be much higher than that.
Yeah,
And again, it gets back to this idea that there's this sort of arbitrary separation in the minds of people that are, probably 45 or older that work in the TV industry, that television and creator content are two completely different animals.
right.
If you talk to consumers of a certain age, they're definitely different, but one is not automatically better than the other. For a long time, the companies that we worked for would refer to premium and non-premium content, non-premium being everything that was on social media. And that's a very dangerous term because premium has some subjectivity built into it about what is better than something else. And and today, better is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah,
Young people they like long form and they like short form, but they use them in different ways, and they each have their own uses, and one is not automatically better than the other. And there's definitely no reason why you would want to go to two separate places to watch two different kinds of video. That just doesn't make sense to them. Uh, and I think that, and that's why we're seeing, like the announcements this week of, like the biggest one, I think, like Disney's partnership with TikTok, where they're actually going to have TikTok creators putting short video on Disney Plus, and they're actually going to let these creators make hay with Disney IP instead of protecting it completely jealously.
wow. Yeah,
They're going to actually turn that over to this fan community because they have realized that in 2026, communities are more important than audiences, and that if you let your users interact with IP and share what they've created, which is what they're already doing on social, you're turning that audience into your most powerful sales force. You're turning them into to act upon their fandom and turning them into ambassadors for your IP. And that is as we've seen, that's why TikTok is so huge. That's why YouTube is so huge. And I think that the prospects for traditional media companies who have all of this IP that they can leverage, that's the biggest asset that anybody has. And I think that it's really encouraging to see them leaning in on this instead of trying to protect it and kind of hiding their light under a bushel.
yeah. I can look, about a regular Google TV user, and on the discovery layer, they'll surface YouTube shorts about the upcoming football season by demographic. I'll get sucked into that, or old war documentaries along
hmm
with connected TV choices. It seems like that's the direction this is all headed at this point.
Yeah, and it's another really really cool thing that Tubi is doing is that, so if you look at Netflix, they're focusing on a lot of the biggest creators or the biggest podcast hosts,
Right.
and Tubi is not getting the biggest ones. They're aiming for the most engaged ones. So they don't necessarily have the biggest audience, but they have the audience that watches the most regularly, or they share the most, or their community of users is the most engaged with each other. That's a completely different metric. It's also a lot less expensive than getting the very biggest creators. But what they're trying to do is create that immersion in the community, create these communities of fans, of people that like the same kinds of content, that are into the same things, because that sort of community experience where you're interacting is way, way, way more sticky than just watching something as an observer.
As always, a dynamic time. It seems just to accelerate.
Yeah, no, the dynamicness, it can be kind of tiring, but it also keeps us in a job. So I guess we can't complain too much.
Yes, there is demand. That's always good. Anyway, it's always great when you guys get on and kind of explain the graphics and add the context that you do. Love the stuff. We'll include a big link in our coverage for this weekend. And thanks for hopping on this Friday and talk to us, John.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Daniel Frankel, Next TMT. We're out.